We started a series of messages last week when we were doing this church-wide campaign, and it's called Aha. It's based on Kyle Adelman's book, and the sermon series is built around that. And we're talking about aha, like, and we know what, like, if you have an aha moment, right? This means it's like this sudden sudden realization, right? You're like, like that, that's why that happens, or that's what that means, right? I shared a couple of those with you last week for me. Let me give you another one. When I was 18 or 19 years old, again, I had another one of these aha moments. And if you've got this image of me in your mind that because I'm a pastor, that he's never done anything wrong or anything mean, let me change that for you. Let me help you out with that, okay? That same year, again, 18, 19 years old, around Christmas time, we had a pretty big snow in Kentucky. And so I was up visiting with some of my family, and I had some friends in Lexington. I lived about 30 miles east of that, but we were there with some family and friends, and there was 4 of us, and we were just running around with with my cousin Carl, my buddy Moo, his name was Moo, his brother Taylor. And so we noticed as we kind of went around the neighborhoods, and this is a pretty nice part of Lexington, lots of houses. We noticed that there were people had built snowmen all day, like families and kids, and that there was all sorts of these snowmen that were all around the neighborhood. And so we decided that we were going to go knock down everybody's snowman. I know it's awful. I'm sure it wasn't my idea. Probably was. But so we said we're going to. But here was the plan. If you've ever done anything devious, you can't just pull up in somebody's driveway and run and knock down the snowman. So my cousin Carl, he came up with this great idea. He's got this, again, this Ford Mustang, and we're crammed in this thing. And so we decided we're going to just pull up on the street, and 2 of us would get out and we'd pop the hood and act like we're having some car trouble, and the other 2 would get out, hit the snowman, run back, and then we would speed off. And that plan, it worked out pretty good for a while. So we would do that. We'd pull up, pop the hood. A couple of us act like something was going on. The other 2 hit the snowman and run back. Now, we had at least one close call. We had a guy, Dad, run out of the house at us. He chased us all the way down. We had enough lead on him. We got into the Mustang. Although we were on some ice, that thing had spun forever. It felt like I was just like, was it Flintstone? Like Fred Flint? Like when there's just no traction at all. But we made it out. The problem occurred just a little bit later on. And so we got out and we did our normal routine. We get out of the car, pop the hood, and look underneath of it. 2 of us go hit the snowman, run back. But this time, as we speed off down the road, all of a sudden, whoo, and the hood on the Mustang goes flying straight up in the air. And we're screaming like, we hit the brakes, and we get out, and that hood on that Mustang is bent where it just, where it went up. And so I had an aha moment at that point, right? We probably got what we deserved, truth be told, right? But this moment was that if you don't latch that hood down really good and you take off down the road, that thing will fly open on you. And so that was an aha moment that day. And so that's what we've been talking about. It's this moment when something happens, a previous truth that was unknown. And we've had all of these, but specifically we've been talking about them as it pertains to our relationship with God. And these are these moments that God does something powerful in our life. And then AHA is an acronym. It stands for awakening, the first part of that. It's a sudden awakening. And this is when your eyes are open to the reality that things aren't right. And sometimes these are moments like we may hit rock bottom. It's a desperate situation. So the bank sends a letter marked foreclosure. The tests come back, and she's pregnant. She files for divorce. Your secret gets revealed. It's a sudden awakening. And then it's followed by honesty. Brutal honesty. This is where you stop lying to yourself. This is where you stop making excuses. This is where you stop pointing the finger at somebody else, and you look in the mirror and you realize if change is going to happen, well, it's going to have to begin with you. And then the third is immediate action. It's action. This is where you change your habits. You break away from the relationship. You check into rehab. You confess your sins to a family member. You do whatever it takes to make things right. And this is where change occurs. And I love these stories Because they're beautiful, they're inspirational, they're powerful, but they don't always start out that way. In fact, most aha stories begin sort of rough. Because in order for there to be a need for an awakening, that means that we've had to leave the Father, His house. In order to have this awakening where God changes our life, we've had to leave our Father's protection. And that's what the parable of the prodigal son is all about. This has been our text. It's in Luke 15. You can go ahead and turn your Bibles there if you haven't already. But it's a story where Jesus talks about a father who this father has two sons. And the younger son comes to the father and says, Dad, I want my share of the inheritance now. I can't wait for you to die. Literally he's saying, I wish that you were dead. And the father gives him what he asked for, and he takes the money and he goes off to a distant land where he squanders it on wild living. Well, shortly after the son goes to this distant land, there's a famine, and the son is hungry, and he realizes how desperate the situation is, and so he musters up the courage to go back home and ask his father for forgiveness. And so this picture that Jesus paints, it's a story about this father, but it's not just a fictional father. It's a picture of God. And if you've ever been there, when we leave the Father's house, when we walk away from His protection, we know a lot of damage can occur before we go back home. And that's what makes these aha stories bittersweet. They're beautiful because change occurs, but they're bitter because despite the commercials, what happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas. They're bitter because what may feel like, and our enemy tells us, hey, doing life apart from God, it brings liberation, it's freedom, it's good. But we discover, no, it actually creates bondage. And yet, the appeal is so great. And many of us have done it. And so Jesus tells this story about this younger son who does exactly that. He leaves the father and heads for a distant land. Let's pick up in verse 13. Jesus continued, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. And so he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. And this is the one thing that all these aha stories have in common. It's the distant country. It's a distant country. Now, the country in this story is literally a faraway place, but figuratively speaking, the distant country is not just some random place. It's distant specifically from God. It's distant specifically from our Heavenly Father. And so you could actually be in the distant country and never leave home. Does that make sense? You following me? It's all about leaving the Father's house, leaving Him. And all aha stories, they end up here. It starts off maybe with just a simple request. Like, I just want to kind of do things on my own. And you step out of church. You step away from your Christian friends. Your prayer life begins to suffer. And you head off to this distant country. And again, maybe it starts off with just you wanting to do things on your own. You're going to date who you want to date. You're going to watch what you want to watch. You're going to go where you want to go. You want to live your way. You're going to be happy. You just want to sit. And then you end up in the distant country. And it seems fun at first, like it's really great. You don't have to answer to anybody. You don't have to feel guilty. You're on the throne. And you get to the distant country, though, and you look around, you're like, I love this because I'm the queen here. I'm the king here. I make up the rules. I do things as I want to do. But the problem is, your kingdom is established on shaky ground. It's shaky ground. And if you've left the Father's house for the distant country, you understand that. You know that when the new wears off, things aren't all that great after all. In fact, we learn a couple things from this story that Jesus tells. First, the distant country, it'll leave you broke. It'll leave you broke. Verse 13 says, when the son had squandered his wealth, or said the son squandered his wealth in wild living. Now, we don't get details. We don't need any, do we? We know what that looks like. He squandered it. We can fill in those pieces. This son would have probably been around 18, 19 years old. Same age as me when I went on my snowman, exhibition, rampage, whatever you want to call it. But this 18-year-old is getting this chunk of money, and you can imagine, like, it's not going to end up so great, right? We've seen this. We've seen celebrities. We've seen athletes who get a whole lot of money, and by the time they're 30, all of it's gone. In fact, when Jesus is talking about this, the actual, we're talking about wild living, it could be defined as the manner of life in which someone destroys himself, or a wild and undisciplined life. His life is out of control, and it's costing him more than he ever imagined. Now, unlike the son here in our story, you may not have purposefully set out for the distant country, but you ended up there anyway. Have you been there, or you know somebody's been there? They wake up one day and they look around and they see everything they've lost, and they look, and may even look in the mirror like, how did I get here? How did I get to this point? You may even look in the mirror like, I don't even recognize myself anymore. And you've been there, like that's the distant country. And you got there the same way the son did. We squander it away, all of everything that we have in wild living. And for you, it may not have been wealth that was lost. You may have lost some wealth along the way. You probably lost some wealth along the way. But for you, maybe it was reputation. It wasn't wealth, but it was maybe your reputation. Maybe for you, it wasn't wealth that you lost, but it may have been your family. Or maybe it wasn't wealth that was lost, but maybe it was a job. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was something else. See, the distant country, it seems so fun, so free, so exciting at first, but it turns into this desolate wasteland. There was this promise of adventure and romance and fun, but it leaves us emptier than we were before. It'll leave us broke. That's not all. Keep reading verse 14. After he'd spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. And so he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. And he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. See, once the son spent all the money that he had demanded from his father, the worst thing happens. Famine comes. No rain, no food, no money anywhere. The son is absolutely broke. Again, this distant country, it seems good at first, but it leaves us empty. And again, how do we get there? Right? Innocent decision. Maybe it's like it's no big deal. This is my life, my choices. But when we live apart from the Father, church, catch this, it begins to hurt. And what happens so often is we end up in this distant country, we burn bridges all along the way. And what happens is that once we get there, we realize that there's no one around to help. And so once your new fling is over, realize you're all alone. Once we climb the corporate ladder and you realize that there's, no family, no friends, just a nice office. Once everybody figures out that no one, all you care about is yourself, nobody wants to be around you. Once you've been evicted because you've spent everything you've had, then where do you go? See, the distant country will take everything you've got and leave you with nothing, which leads into the second point. The distant country will leave you all alone. It'll leave you all alone. See, when the son decides to leave home, it's not just an isolated decision. His father's involved. His brother's involved. We don't read about his mother, but we can be sure that his mother would be involved too, right? Her heart would have been broken. When we live apart from our Father, it doesn't just affect us, it affects those around us. Right? When a man justifies having an affair because she's not being what he needs, when a woman justifies having an affair because he just doesn't seem to care anymore, those things have generational effects. When you stay out late because when you want that raise, you've got to get that job, then your family goes to bed every night without seeing you. When you medicate with drugs and alcohol, not only do you suffer, but your whole family suffers. Y'all remember the show, it may still be on, I don't know, but it was a show that used to come on, it's called Intervention. And what would happen is that someone who maybe they're severely addicted to drugs or alcohol, or maybe they have an eating disorder, there would be an intervention from their family. And that person's closest friend or family would tell them how they've been affected by the friend's struggle. And so one sister said to her brother, all I wanted was to be around my big brother. But things are different now. I've gone from always wanting to be in your presence to being fearful of being alone in the room with you. One son said to his father, Dad, if I had one wish, I wish that you would get better. Please get better for our family. One mother said to her daughter, I hope you'll always remember the good times we had, but everything changed since you got sick. You are disrespectful. You're very rude to us. We will not take this anymore. We want our daughter back. See, the difficult truth is that life in the distant country, it doesn't just affect us, it affects everyone around us. Remember Jonah? Remember the prophet Jonah? God calls Jonah to go preach to the city of Nineveh. What does Jonah do? Jonah turns, goes the opposite direction, 2,000 miles literally to a distant country called Tarshish. And God sends a storm on the boat that Jonah is on as he's heading to this distant land. And the storm rocks the boat. And they're afraid they're about to drown. And everybody runs to Jonah like, hey, he's asleep. And they run to him and says, wake up, call on your God. We're about to drown here. And the truth of the matter was, the storm was happening because of Jonah's sin. See, your sin doesn't just affect you. It affects those around you. But God used that storm in an incredible way to wake up the prophet. God used that storm in an incredible way as a wake-up call for Jonah. And that's what's so wonderful about today. That's why I'm so happy that you are here. Because just when it seems like you're at the end of your rope, God has something to say. You with me? I mean, He has something to say. Just when, God brings beauty from ashes. God works in ways that only He can work. Because here's the truth, and I want you to follow me. God's really good at writing aha stories. God's really good at taking something that looks bleak and looks bad, taking it and bringing beauty. In fact, we got an aha testimony this morning that Heath Davis is going to come and share, and where God has done exactly that. So let's welcome Heath as he comes up here. Give him a nice round of applause. Yeah.
Good morning. So, I've been kind of battling with this all week. I didn't really know how I wanted to share this with y'all. I've written out probably 9 pages of stuff that just kind of moved around my head and sent it to Kelly, and Kelly was like, dial it back a little bit. So he helped me out a lot with it. And so basically what I want to do is just kind of give you the highlights. My childhood was really amazing. I was really blessed. Came from a great family. My dad was still one of the best men I know to this day. Very successful man, executive for the hospital. My mom is a VP for a national bank. My dad's dad was a banker for 40 years, a staple in his community. My mom's dad is a nationally renowned financial advisor. There's a litany of nothing but success in my family. And for some reason, I never felt like I was ever going to reach that. I never felt like I was going to be good enough to be as good as these good people in my life. And it eventually led me down to a road of anxiety and depression and self-medication. Quickly became an alcoholic. Started to really take over my life. And God really stepped in about mid-December in 2021. I've been drinking heavy for several years at this point, and my family was starting to fall apart. My job was suffering. I was losing relationships, and felt like all hope was lost. And I was sitting in my basement, which used to be my safe place as a kid, because the house I'm living in now is actually my grandparents' place. And I was sitting in that basement, and I was under the stairs, and I just remember sitting there with one last Hail Mary attempt, just begging God to please, whatever you got to do to get this sin off of my life. I don't care what it is. Get it off of me. I'm sick of it. I'm destroying everything I love. You've provided so much for me, and I'm spitting in your face. Please help me with this. And I don't know if I was looking for a sign or an audible answer, but I do know that at that moment, it felt like it was radio silence. I didn't feel like I had anything there. family, everybody probably just expected me to be just like the other people in my family, when in fact I was sinning deeply in secrecy, and it was destroying everything I had. And the oddest part about it is that, a few days later after this wreck, I managed to actually kind of walk away virtually unscathed. I don't know how fast I was going, but I know the highway trooper said that I had to have been moving at least 60 on that road. And if you saw the pictures of my truck, you probably wonder how I made it out too. 3 days after this accident, I, was encouraged strongly by my family to take this head on. The only way that I was going to be able to beat this is if I just put my head down and keep moving. And so, not too long after the wreck, I got sent to rehab. And I'm going to be honest with you, I did not want to be there at all. This felt like hell on earth. But while I was in rehab, the only thing that I could think about as I was sitting in my room by myself was that prayer I had in my basement 2 weeks before this instance. By any means necessary. I'm tired of being in secret. Whatever it takes to get it off of me. And oddly enough, all of my sins had been brought to light. There was no more secrets. Everybody knew what I had done. There's no more hiding it. And it just led me to ask this question. Isn't it odd that 2 weeks before I found myself in this position that I was begging God to take this away from me by any means necessary? Isn't it strange that somebody that came from such a good family ended up in this position, lost all hope, and somehow managed to come out the other side? Isn't it just the weirdest thing in the world that this sin that I held in private for so long got brought to light by a decision that I did not even intend to make until the moment that it happened? Doesn't God answer prayer? My life hasn't been perfect after. I still got my struggles, everybody sins. But I will say this, there's something freeing about not having any secrets. There's something liberating about feeling like you don't have to hide anything anymore. Just being authentic. And what I learned in this is that sometimes the only way that you can make it out of a fire is if you walk right through it. And even though I felt like God wasn't there that whole time, he kind of popped up out of nowhere. So, if there's any advice I can give you is that be careful with your prayer requests, because sometimes God's going to give you exactly what you ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. It's just, God is really good at taking a rough beginning and making a beautiful story. Only God can work like that. And again, regardless of where you're at, maybe you're in the distant country right now, and it seems like you're at a dead end and your story is over. Church, God sees something different. God doesn't see an ending. He sees a beginning, and it gets your attention somehow. And it seems bad at first. When the light appeared to Saul, he went blind. When the fish swallowed Jonah, he was as good as dead. When the law was read to Josiah, he mourned. And God got their attention by pointing to their story and said, listen, this is not how it's going to end. If you'll just let me take it from here, this is only the beginning. That's exactly what he did for Heath. And church, listen, just as God woke up Jonah from his sleep, just as he's been working in Heath's life, as he worked in the Apostle Paul, my prayer for all of us is that we would wake up from our sleep in the distant country. That we would have this aha moment, and it doesn't have to be like dramatic, it doesn't have to be big, but that we would say, that God just works in us and wakes us up. Listen, to the husband whose marriage is falling apart, but you're indifferent and you're distracted by video games or golf or work or whatever, you're so distracted to fight for your wife, wake up. I mean, to the college student who you've developed this habit of getting drunk and sleeping with strangers, wake up. I mean, to the mother who yells at her kids, but she doesn't remember the last time she knelt by their bedside to pray, wake up. To the high school student who spends hours a day looking at porn online and you're sending nude images of yourself, wake up. God wants to give you a better story. I mean, even if your story has a beginning, and yours may not be, like every story has a beginning, and yours may not be great right now, but when God is the author, change and beauty are possible. Amen? Listen, I don't know how God might be trying to get your attention. Sometimes, again, it's dramatic. It's dramatic and powerful, and God works in ways like, really, God? But sometimes it doesn't have to always be like that. Remember Elijah? Elijah goes to meet, God says, I'm going to meet you on the mountain. And Elijah goes to the mountain. He's waiting on God. And God, like that first, there's this strong wind as Elijah waits, blowing through the air. And Elijah thought, okay, God must be in the wind. But the wind died down. And God wasn't in the wind. And then there was this earthquake on the mountain. And the mountain shook. And Elijah thought, okay, surely God's in the mountain. Or in the earthquake, rather. But he wasn't. And then there was a fire that swept through the mountain and through the area. And Elijah thought, well, God's got to be in the fire. But the fire subdued, and God wasn't in the fire. Instead, God spoke to Elijah, how? In a gentle whisper. Literally, it was a sound of sheer silence. God may speak to you like that. Maybe it's lying in your bed before you go to sleep at night or in the morning. Or maybe it's like Paul in Ephesians 5 where he writes, wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Maybe God uses it like from a preacher or somebody else who's sort of shouting it and telling you, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to go back to your Father. But if we want to live this aha story that God wants to write, it takes us leaving the distant country, facing our responsibility, and going back home. And going back home. That's exactly what all stories, they look like. What's your story? What's your story today? See, here's the remarkable thing about the Father. And we've been singing about it all morning. Here's the remarkable thing. Like, if you know how the story ends, if you know how the story, and we read all of it last week, you know the son goes back home. You know that he goes, but listen, and the son goes back home, and he doesn't deserve to be welcomed. He doesn't deserve mercy. He's embarrassed his family. The son has done, like he's wasted all the things that the father has worked so hard to have. He's been immoral. He's been selfish. He's been prideful. And yet the father has got his eye on the horizon. And he's hoping and praying for the day would come that his son would return. And Jesus is saying, listen, this is what a picture of your heavenly Father. He wants you to come home. He wants you to turn to Him. He wants you to wake up. He wants you to stop living like that and just turn to Him and trust Him. Are you willing? And He's willing to offer you that same forgiveness and an opportunity to turn if you've left. Or maybe today it's turning to the Father for the very first time. Maybe that's your story. Maybe this is brand new for you. Maybe like this is, you don't know a whole lot even about what all this is, but God's just working in your life right now. And you're like, God's doing something. I've got to respond in some way. We'd love to help walk you through that and show you what it means to be a follower of Jesus and trust Him. Again, maybe even right now, it's just for you. It's just saying, you know what, I'm sick of this. I've been hiding. I've been living in this sin for so long. It's time to come clean. It's time to be authentic. It's time to stop hiding secrets. Freedom is available today. It's all found in Jesus. We have just such a good God who loves us. Would you pray with me? Father, you, since the beginning of time, Lord, you've adopted us. You've set us aside, Lord. You have worked in our life in beautiful, wonderful ways. God, thank you for Heath and his courage that it takes to stand up here and to say, I've blown it. I was hiding something. I know it's embarrassing. But God, thank you for the courage that it takes to do that and the humility. And God, I know, as I've told him, I know you're going to use his story to help others. And this is just the beginning for Heath, I'm sure, in terms of what and how you're going to use that. But God, I just thank you for his story. I thank you for other stories in the church, aha moments for each of us, Lord. Every single one of us have had to have our eyes open at some point to our sin, to our junk that's in our life, and whether it's big, dramatic, or not, Lord. Help us to come back home. Help us to come to you. Help us to trust you, our Heavenly Father, who looks out on the horizon and waits for his children. Lord, we love you, we praise you, we thank you all in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we're going to stand and we're going to sing, and we invite you as we sing a song of worship, it's a song of praise, but also a time of decision. Happy to talk with you if you want to do so, or if you just want to come forward for prayer, you're welcome to do that. Just to sing this great old song that many of us know so well about God's incredible, amazing grace.